Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Joshua Russ. I'm the one of the enrollments managers here at Fourth Rev for the LSE Data Analytics Career Accelerator. Lovely to have you all joining us here today for one of our Ask Me Anything webinars, where we're going to be joined by our lovely guest, Cara, in a moment, who is an alumni student of the program. And it's going to be really exciting to just hear her story, as she brought a lot of resilience, real world insight, and she'll bring obviously a learner's perspective to the session, given she's completed the program and navigated a career pivot or a change like many of our students do. And actually, towards the end of the program, she experienced a redundancy as well. So it'll be really exciting to hear all things regarding her story, and importantly, for everyone in attendance, you'll be able to ask questions of myself, but ideally as well, Cara, and her experience as you are looking to make this decision or learn more about the program. A couple of things. So we've got a chat function here. So you'll see some useful, interesting links that will appear throughout: brochure, meeting link to speak with your enrollment advisor, a whole range of links coming through. Importantly, though, the Q&A function that you'll want to look at the bottom as well. This is where you post your questions. If you put your questions in the chat, we will politely ask you to please put it in the Q&A. And it's never too soon. If you've already got a question in mind that you'd love to ask of Cara, being an alumni student, start jumping in there, and we'll prioritize those initial early questions. But yeah, let's get underway. So before I do introduce Cara in a few minutes, I wanted to just give everyone a bit of an overview if you're not aware of what the Data Analytics Career Accelerator is. We're a careers first program. And so what that means is that we're geared fully towards helping you, the student, achieve your intended career outcome. So whether like that's current potential career pivot or a career change, or you already potentially work with data to some extent and you're looking at advancement in your current career, we're very much geared towards helping you achieve that. And we do that with a holistic approach. So you've seen and you'll see, obviously, the program has been designed and built by the LSE, a top 30 university in the world, but uniquely in collaboration with industry as well. So for this program, Tableau and GitHub have collaborated on the build too, to make sure what you do learn is practical and industry aligned. That's a unique point. Historically, you would either look at completing, say, a traditional, say, a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, which is predominantly academia focused. And at times, there can be a disconnect between what you learn in academia to what's currently relevant in industry. But on the flip side, you could look at some shorter courses or some more kind of private institutions and programs that give you the relevant skills or intend to, but there isn't the academic rigor, the critical thinking, the problem solving skills, and the reputation that's synonymous with a top university like the LSE. So this program is truly unique in the sense of combining the two. And what that means for you is no exams, which is very exciting for most. It's all practical project-based learning, and that all culminates in a digital portfolio of evidence. So that's one of the things you will receive as a part of completing, is a digital portfolio that allows you to showcase to prospective employers or current employers all of the skills, the projects, the experiences that you have uniquely had in the Career Accelerator. And as a part of that, it gives you great confidence then in the skills that you've obtained that are relevant for that future or current role. Alongside that, when we talk about the holistic nature, you're receiving executive style career coaching from the beginning, the outset of the program. And that's really critical in making sure that you are empowered with the skills, the tools, and everything you need to help you land that role or that promotion as effectively as possible. Program's fully online. It's 6 to 7 months in length, and you're looking at around 20 hours of study per week on average. Again, that's on average. Everyone is different. We'll talk a little bit about that. but it's designed for the working professional in mind. The majority of our students work full-time or part-time as they do this. I think more details will come throughout this next hour, but uniquely, instead of hearing from me, we really want to hear Cara's story as well. So, Cara, welcome.
Hiya,
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm great. Having a good day despite the terrible weather.
It happens. Well, here at Fourth, we're virtually global organization. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia at the moment. So we're easing into the winter, and technically you should be easing into the summer, but it's taking a little longer than expected.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So great to have you on board and really looking forward to hearing your story. Tell us just a brief introduction.
Yeah.
Who is Cara?
So I did this course, the LSE Career Accelerator in 2023. I completed it just at the end, towards the end of the year. I worked full time while I was doing it and also had a part-time job. So I was doing marketing mainly before. I ran social media channels, I ran digital ads across publishing. And yeah, and now I have completely sort of career pivoted. I'm now a audience research executive at the BBC, so I work in TV.
Fantastic. And they're the sort of outcomes that really excite us. When you started the program, did you have a clear goal in mind as to what that pivot or change looked like, or was part of the learning experience and the coaching part of determining what that next step looks like for you?
Um, I don't think so. I think I sort of went into it just hoping for some sort of change. I knew that I was sort of slightly unhappy in the role that I was doing in the team that I was in, and I was sort of like, okay, well, I'll do this in sort of secret and work it out afterwards. I know a lot of people are able to get finance uh, support through their workplace, people who can get like sponsorship. I did not have that opportunity, so I was doing this on the lowdown, and I kind of just wanted to see what happened. I think, as you mentioned previously, I did go through redundancy at the end of the towards the end of the program, and that I think was the main sort of motivator for me to be like, okay, now I actually have to think about how I want to use these skills. There was a real opportunity for me to go, okay, well, I did this course, but I'll just keep looking for social media roles. And I think with the help of my career coach and sort of the fact that I had done all these really cool practical projects, that really pushed me to say, okay, cool, what can I do with this? And that obviously then helped me get this role in the BBC.
Mm. So, I mean, through the adversity and obviously the disappointment of the redundancy, which is really a difficult thing, it's fast track, I guess, your progression and actually achieving that career goal for you. Um, how did your previous experience in digital marketing, do you feel, if anything, did it shape your transition into data analytics? Were there any transferable skills?
Yeah, I think any role where you're kind of generally looking at data does mean that you have will have some transferable skills. So within my role, I was looking a lot of at ads and how they were performing and optimizing them, and a lot of that was to do with Excel spreadsheets. So the course does cover a little bit of Excel towards the beginning, and that was directly transferable to what I was doing at the time, and did also give me projects that I could work on in my spare time. Um, but generally, uh, yeah, I think it was just sort of it is quite different to what I'm doing now. If we're being honest, it's much. But there also is the possibility that I could go do analytics for a marketing company, for
Yeah.
example.
Okay. Okay. So with the current role being so different, what surprised you? What do you enjoy most about the role that maybe you didn't think you would?
Hmm. Well, that's a really good question. Um, I think I think what surprised me is was sort of like the access that you get to sort of behind the scenes of TV and what's going on, like how everything is calculated, how we actually check ratings, like how the system works. I had no idea of that before. And that's been really interesting to learn about.
Mm, sure it is. And again, it all ties into so many roles now being data driven.
Mm.
Did you, prior to starting this or exploring data, would you have considered yourself a data person as such, or or have a data skill set?
I think so. I had quite an analytical degree, so I think I had some sort of general understanding of data. I used it a lot in my role in terms of like deciding whether to turn ads on or off or things like that. But I think the course has given me a much fuller data skill set. I had no idea of Python. I'd never used a SQL in a sort of professional meth like way. I think yeah, I think I had some data skills. I wouldn't say that I would have been anywhere close to being an analyst.
Yeah, yeah, and that links in well, I guess, just for people's understanding of the entry criteria for the program, and then maybe the foundational skills that you need. So there's three pathways. You can gain entry via a previous educational experience. So what I gathered there from you, Cara, is you probably studied at least a unit of quantitative studies previously, which would have automatically deemed you eligible. If you don't have that, you can do gain entry via professional experience. So 3 years where you're dealing with data to some extent. Does not mean you need to be an analyst, but you might use Excel on a daily basis or whatever it may be. And then thirdly, if you don't meet either of those criteria, there's an aptitude test. It's 30 multiple choice questions over 30 minutes. If you get 50% or above, then you are deemed eligible for the program. So there is a third alternate pathway there if you don't meet the criteria, and many students
Yeah.
do successfully enter.
Just
Um,
to add to that, one of my biggest fears going into the course was that my math skills wouldn't be good enough. I had a sort of real chip on my shoulder about being worried about not necessarily being a maths head. So I actually did do the aptitude test as well, as a test for myself. And I would say that it's if that is a worry for you, I would say it's not something that you should be worried about at all. I think there are, stats sections within the course, but a lot of it is calculated. You can rely on your Python skills that you've used, and your Excel skills that you might already have. Um, and I think it all comes if you spend the time to study, then it all comes to you in the end.
Very good point you make. And I think it's a lot of us, if you're not using maths in your role, um, often we're quite rusty. If it was something that you studied in a university degree way back when, and it's interesting. The aptitude test is designed as a pathway, but it's actually, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but it's very different to actually the learning experience and what you're focusing on. You're learning a lot of the in-demand skills and technologies as you spoke to. There are pockets of statistics. Course three, there's a couple of weeks, but you're over halfway through the program at that stage. You're in much more of a better frame of mind, and in a good routine with it, and you're kind of prepared for it a little bit better as well. So for sure, I would validate from our experience too. If you meet the criteria, it's not then a question of am I good enough to complete it? I always recommend from an enrollments perspective is that it's more about can you dedicate the required time to apply yourself to give yourself the best opportunity to complete. And we'll jump into that in a moment with you just about what you were doing in terms of working around your other commitments, and you had multiple. Um, but entry criteria aside, foundational skills, what would you recommend? Excel as a minimum?
Yeah. I would say probably Excel. I think if you probably would need to have this sort of general understanding of uh, being able to adapt to different programs. Like if you've never used Tableau before, it is a bit of a jump. So if you feel like you do struggle with, adapting, I think it's just knowing that you need to dedicate a bit more time to learning the programs. But yeah, I would say I actually think you could probably go in. There's resources that they give are so comprehensive, and also a lot of it can be sort of topped up with other sources. I think that for parts of I had a free data camp subscription, just for like a little bit, and that I used a little bit of that for some of the coursework and stuff, just to say like, oh, I'm not quite sure I'm understanding, give me a chance to practice some of these skills. I would say like there's not that much that you would need beforehand. I think just a general like no a general feeling that you can go into a problem solving mindset, um, and again being able to say, okay, I can dedicate the time to learn the skills and programs that I need to go forward with.
Very good point around the problem solving mindset. It's a focus of the program, and studying an LSE program. It's designed to be difficult, but it's designed to prepare you then for future or improvement in your current role. Um, how has then that problem solving mindset applied to, because we often focus on the technical skills, right? Um, how has that other side helped you in your current role?
I think I think it helps every day. I think a lot of the time, you'll get sort of a random question from someone who's not necessarily very data savvy from another team, and it's about figuring out how you can get that data. Like, you say, I have this data set and another data set. How can I combine the information to build a story uh, to tell that data storytelling? You know, yeah, I think it's just having a mix of being able to combine different data sets to tell that story that you want to tell.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So thank you. There's already 6 questions coming through, which is great. Love the engagement. Please keep sending them through. There was a question here that I'll answer now, and you can add if there's anything further, Cara, but we kind of just acknowledged it. So the question was, Cara, did you already have technical experience in Python and SQL before you started the course?
No, so I had covered SQL in my degree, but that was like 10 years ago. I hadn't used it really since. I didn't really recall any of it, and I'd never used Python at all. Um, so yeah, I had base. I would say no. I would say no. I didn't really have any of those skills.
Yeah, yeah, great. Keep the questions coming through. There are a few questions that I'm just reading here that are more enrollment specific, and more than happy to answer those. I'll do them towards the end of the program, towards the end of the webinar, I should say. For the moment, we'll focus on questions that are relevant for Cara. So we'll get to those questions at the end. Workload. We spoke about, well, you briefly mentioned you went through a redundancy towards the end of the program. That surely would have impacted your potential journey and the motivation. So we'll get back to that in a moment as to how you juggled those things. But just generally speaking, what did your an average week look like as you were studying the Career Accelerator?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was working full time. I also had a part-time evening job, so I was working evenings as well. Um, I think it was that I would set aside maybe like 4 or 5 hours every evening. So instead of, going to the pub with my friends, it did mean that for that sort of 7 months, I wasn't necessarily spending as much time doing fun things, but obviously it paid off. And I think it's really important to remember that it is short term. It's only 6 or 7 months of your life. It's not going to be forever. Um, and I think, yeah, just saying, okay, I'm going to do 5 days this week or 6 days this week and then have a day off, or I'm working Tuesday evening, so I have to plan around that as well as learning and doing my coursework. Um, I think it was just about managing time and understanding that you can't necessarily do all the fun things that you would want to do normally, but it's cool because it's only temporary.
It is. Um, and look, there's little resets in between each 6 week course. There's a week of reflection where ideally you're not doing any study in that time. So there's a tiny little break, but you're totally right. It's 6 or 7 months of your entire life that can have a really meaningful impact. Where do you think, if you didn't take that first step and that risk and jump into this program, What do you think your life would look like compared to where you are now?
That's such a difficult question. I have no idea. I felt like I imagine I probably would have just gone back into another social media role. I would have been working on creating content for big brands, but not necessarily being connected to it in the same way, and sort of secretly knowing that I wanted to be looking at the more technical data side of it.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is just in a lot of these webinars that I've hosted with current or ex students, one of the consistent messages that comes out is the difference, say, between you speaking here now, Cara, and what you've achieved in terms of roles compared to some prospective students is you took that first step, you took that risk. And as we've spoken about, it's making sure that you have the right amount of time to dedicate to give yourself the best opportunity to complete rather than the stressing too much about your actual capabilities to complete the program. Um, and that one ties into the flexibility of it. So just to delve into you had two jobs. So how many on it, just roughly, how many hours would you have been working per week?
Um, so I've had the 37.5 hour full time, and then the evening shifts were between 4 to 6 hours. But they were casual, so it wasn't set. It was like I could pick up a shift or drop it. Well, it was difficult to drop a shift, but if really difficult, if really need be, if I had coursework, I could drop a shift.
Yeah.
Um, I think I did about 3 shifts a week. So yeah, somewhere in between, I don't know, 50 hours ish.
Yeah, it's very impressive to
Is it
then consider
impressive or is it crazy? That's the question.
bit of both, bit of both, but you're still here. um, did you what were you dedicating then to actual study on top of your work?
Um, I would say probably was about 20 to 25 hours a week. A bit less when we got towards the end, when it was more towards the employer project, because then you're not necessarily studying alongside, you're just working on the sort of sections that you've been allocated, which did mean that I had a bit more free time towards the end. But yeah,
Yeah, courses 1 to 3. I mean, you're learning the content that you then need to apply to your individual project, and so you're right. It's pretty clear that it's 20 to 25 hours per week on average. Um, The employer project is a different story because you're then not necessarily learning new content. You're applying what you've learned to a real situation. So there's a bit more flexibility there, which is good. Interestingly, in speaking to the student success team as well, over the many years the program's been running, it's funny that quite often the busiest students, like yourself, are the ones that perform so well. And I think it comes down to time management, but also utilizing the support that you have. So, not suffering in silence. What was the support like in the program? So, a bit of an overview of the different um, resources or support mechanisms that you had in place, and then what value were they for you in your experience?
yeah. So there were, I think there were weekly or bi-weekly sort of online sessions with the tutors. So I know I can't remember all of them, but Andre was one of the sort of main ones that I worked with. I think knowing that if I really didn't get something, that I could either, look it up or make time to go to that session, which I think were often during the workday as well. So if I had an hour in the day, I could go to this 12 o'clock class and ask all the questions that I needed to ask. That was really helpful. Um, I think also generally the career coach was really great because alongside, you know, um, planning for the future, she did help me like put things into perspective. There were a couple of times when I was like, I'm not sure I can do this, and she was like, "Okay, cool, don't worry about it. Like we can put together a bit of a time schedule for the week. I can help you kind of sort your mind out." It's just good to have someone to chat to. And then obviously outside the program, I also had a very supportive partner who made dinners for me, mostly, and also is he's a scientist, but he does do a little bit of programming, so that he was there a little bit to have it to ask really obvious questions that I was just freaking out about.
Well, importantly, as you said, he kept you alive, which is the
Exactly.
key.
If he
Um,
wasn't there, I would have eaten a bag of olives every night.
he's the real winner in this. So then, uh, when times got tough, you've spoken about the support from your partner. Um, what kind of kept you going and motivated?
I think partially I would say it's the fact that the coursework is actually genuinely interesting. There was never a moment where I was like, I don't want to do this because it's boring. It was that it's challenging, but knowing that you're going to get a really interesting solution at the end, you're going to have an answer. And again, that you can ask other people for help really helped push me through. And also understanding that, again, it is just temporary, it's only 7 months, and then you're free to go. Well, at the time, I was like, I'll be free to just live my life and go continue to do what I'm doing and then plan. Obviously, that didn't happen, but knowing that it's literally such a short amount of time, it will go so fast. Um, and also you always have a deadline. There's never a moment where you're like, oh, I'm just moving along. Like you're literally like, I have a week to learn all of this before another bunch of content gets released, and I might also have to do coursework soon. So I think that also helped. I have ADHD, so I'm very deadline orientated because otherwise I will just faff about. And I think the deadlines helped me a lot specifically.
Yeah, the ADHD brain release the adrenaline when you've got the deadlines. You need them to kind of work well. I'm very similar.
Exactly.
What about we've got a heap of questions, so I'd like to jump into some of these as well. We're going to jump around a little bit. Um, but a question here from an anonymous attendee. So, how did the career coach help you land your new job, or what kind of help do they offer that helped you be confident in your new role? You did already speak briefly around the confidence that they gave you when you were doubting yourself. So you can unpack that more, but how else did they support you?
So I think towards the beginning of the course, she did a sort of SWOT analysis. So like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your sort of targets? And also within that, she made me think a lot around what kind of industries that I would actually want to work in and why. And there was also a section around um, like how you like to work and thinking about whether or not that supports working in a big organization versus a small organization. And I think all of that together helped me really prioritize when I was looking for roles. So I think, for example, I knew I personally would rather work at a large organization. So I didn't really look at smaller ones when I was job hunting, or I knew that from some of the sort of tests and the work that we did, I was able to think like, oh, I actually prefer a supporting role versus like a really managerial role. So that also helped me figure out which kind of jobs to lean into. Um, I worked out that I have to be passionate about what I'm working on or which company I work for. So I steered towards public service like the BBC, but also like charities and sort of cultural arts organizations. So that also kind of helped me plan what kind of areas I wanted to look into. Um, and then also I understood that marketing was, a strength. So I also was looking at things like, and that meant that when we got to pick our employer project towards the end, I veered towards the marketing option as opposed to I think there was another option that was around uh, mortgage providers and helping people assess whether they were suitable for a mortgage. Yeah, so again, like understanding a bit more about yourself through the career coach. And then at the end, she also helped me with interview prep. She helped me with my CV. She helped me update my LinkedIn. Just gave me really good resources for figuring out like now you're out of the course, how can you sort of adapt yourself and your online presence to like optimize the skills that you have.
Yeah, make you as employable as possible, right? And
Yeah.
everyone's, but Cara's been pretty comprehensive there in terms of the ways that they supported her. But we fully understand that everyone has different gaps or pain points. So a big question that always comes from us is, do we find people jobs as a part of the program? And no, we're not going, the coaches aren't going to say, Cara, apply for company job with company A, B, and C. But as Cara detailed, they'll empower with all the skills and tools you need to be able to actually identify those roles and understand what best suits you. And I think that's more valuable in a way. I mean, a lot of the skills that you've spoken about, right, are going to be useful for you for the rest of your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. Cool. Anything else on that before we roll on?
Mm. No, I don't think so. I think I would just say that I just again didn't realize how important LinkedIn would be for me in the future. And I think that as a segment was actually so important and helpful um for now, but also at the time.
Yeah, yeah. It's all part of putting yourself out there too, which can be potentially daunting for people as well if you don't currently use LinkedIn that well. But it's a really important component. Another question here, which is just around why you chose LSE over other institutions. What was the
Yeah.
appeal?
I think it was partially understanding the prestige of the LSE. Like there's, you know, there are loads of boot camps, lots of them that, have been running for a long time but aren't necessarily accredited and aren't related to sort of people won't necessarily know who they are or what they do. So I think that kind of helped me make that choice, but also understanding the support that I would get. Sorry, that it wasn't just going to be that I get chucked all of this information and then have to go run with it. Understanding that there were course leaders, the sort of people that I could turn to help with, the career coaching, um, the sort of package of it all together um, made it feel like a better proposition than any of the other sort of boot camps that I'd seen online.
Yeah, I mean, a big one is the structured learning. Often individuals, and I think you said data camp that you had access to previously, but there's a lot of like online resources and fully self-paced programs that you can do. But when you're learning something so technical, the actual structured learning and having the multiple tiers of support, as to your point with reputation of the LSE, can give you great confidence in what you're actually learning and buy in to then what you're learning will be useful. From an employment perspective, was there any moment or instance where you actually saw or identified that studying at the LSE benefited you?
Um, not I couldn't say actually. I imagine it added some sort of understanding of when people were looking at my CV, of what the course was or that who had administered it. Um, there were other roles that I'd applied for where I could see that people who um people who were running the interviews or people who had been involved were related to the LSE. So a job that I applied for but didn't get. One of the people that I've been working with really closely had also been to the LSE, so that's a really nice connection that we had in the interview. I think that did help me get through to the second round, which I didn't get through to in the end. But like obviously, it doesn't matter because I got a job in the end that I love. But sort of being able to see the connections between yourself and other people and being able to talk about your experience of this place that you've both been a part of is really handy.
Yeah, and we always say like it gets your foot in the door potentially of roles that maybe previously wouldn't have occurred. And so in instances like that, it's not necessarily noticeable. But then what about through the interview process with the 4 projects you complete, um, and the experiences you get there, it allows you to actually, as I mentioned, storytell more effectively the skills you had. How did you use the projects and the project-based learning in this program through the interview process that ultimately landed you the role?
I think it was actually really important to be able to say, like, oh, I have these skills and here's how I've applied them. So being able to talk about specific projects that I've done, specific coursework, like say, for example, saying, oh, I, as an example of time when I really struggled with a data set, I could refer to the NHS data in course, I don't remember which number it was, course 2, for example, where I did this thing with this data and all of this data had this particular missing section. I've actually just been going through interviews at the moment, and I've been still directly being able to reference those data examples, because I think especially in a lot of professional data, you're less likely to be able to have access to data that has, null values or missing information. But when you have those examples from the course, you can say, well, actually, I haven't had that experience in my professional role, but in my LSE course 2 years ago, I was able to do this with this data. Or it all ties back to being able to talk about your experience and your portfolio and the things that you have been able to do with data, which you would necessarily have otherwise.
Yep. And sometimes prospective students get caught up in the idea that, well, will the projects I complete in the program be focused on the same industry that I want to get into or I'm currently into? And that's not the case, right? They vary. But and that's my question to you is, that doesn't matter, right? The skills are transferable. It's just about being able to showcase that, irrelevant of what the actual focus was.
Exactly. Just being able to talk about the skills and the sort of reasoning behind the decisions that you made.
Yep. Yep. Great. So, some questions here around the projects and your actual experience. So, another anonymous attendee. What was your favorite assignment during the course, and what aspect of it did you enjoy?
Hmm. Um, I would say that my favorite on the course was the the Tableau dashboards. In part because I actually use Tableau all the time at work now, so it's really interesting to be able to say like, oh, I truly understand how this was built and how it works. But also, it was the first really big coursework. It was the one that I got the highest grade in. I still open that dashboard and look at it to this day and think I did a really good job. I actually really like just looking at this dashboard. It's great. So being able to have like a really visible product of something that you worked on. I think you could say that of most of the coursework, but I think that one in particular is like a really clear, like I can use this. I can actually put this on my, if I wanted to, I could put this on my Tableau portfolio and try and get
Yep.
data viz of the year or data viz of the day if I wanted to.
And then a second question was, were you able to connect or network with peers, other students during the program?
Yeah. So there is uh, when I was on the course, there was a forum. So where if people were having questions or struggling or uh, had a sort of technical question about the software that we were trying to use, there was this sort of forum, and it also I think had like polls and things like that on it. And there were a couple of people from there who, if I had a question or they had a question, we'd chat and then we'd actually connect on LinkedIn and we'd email throughout the course um, to say like, oh, how are you finding this bit? Do you have any answers? Do you have like can you help me out with this? And still getting in touch with some of those people to this day. Um, then at the end of the course on the employer project, you get put into a team. So you're working as a team on a project. And that group of people, again, I'm still in contact with them. We still have our WhatsApp group. Occasionally we'll like message and say like, how are you doing? Um, but yeah, that particular section I think is a really good networking experience because you're put in with people from across the world. One of the guys that I work with who was in that project works for Microsoft. And he was just doing it because he wanted the qualification. He was just trying to like try something new. But I never would have met anyone from Microsoft in my day-to-day life. So again, it is a good way to network.
Yeah, and networking does come down to the individual. We do our best to give you opportunities. So as Cara mentioned, through the online student community, there's WhatsApp groups that are created then as well. When you're doing your employer project, you build a strong bond with those individuals because you are working closely over the 6 weeks. But it's the low-hanging fruit of networking with your peers and with the types of, and it's a um, very type of student that's in the program, but you all got to meet the requirements. It is an LSE program. There's a level of prestige. So um, we've had students land jobs as a part of networking with their peers. So job opportunity comes up with their employer. of a peer and they apply for it. We've had a couple of instances of people that have started consulting companies or got their own business and have potentially hired some people as well. So it's a really good starting point. The coaches as well talk a lot about networking, right? And how a lot of roles can come up within your network. That's a low hanging fruit. So certainly lots of opportunity to do that whilst being fully online,
Yeah.
and provide some good examples there.
I think
Um,
also just like even on during the course, I think there were meetups. I don't think I was able to attend any of them, but I think there was this potential for you to get access to the LSE library, and quite a few people would meet up and do study sessions or meet up and just go to the pub and hang out and meet each other. So there were other opportunities there as well.
yeah, absolutely. You will get access to the library should you request. And any of those meetups are informal. They're not, of course, a requirement of the program, but they do happen. So yeah, they're brilliant as well. Um, let's talk a little bit about your employer project, uh, as much as you can. Some have some NDAs, but who was your employer project with, and what was the focus?
Yeah, it was with a company called Agent 3, and we were looking at a few years worth of advertising campaign data, um, to try and work out like which channels they should uh, keep using, which ones they should pull out because they're less effective, or if they were going to keep them, what other reasons there might be for that. So things like visibility or uh, lead generation, even though like it might be smaller numbers, it might be more valuable for lead generation, etc.
Yep. Agent 3 was a good project. There was a question here just around some of the other employers. We basically have a pool that we work with. And given the cohort sizes for this program that can range now anywhere from 100 to 150, there will be multiple project partners. So there may be some options there for you to be able to select if there is a program that's potentially more a project that's more appealing. Um, I think that answers that around the cohort question as well. Just looking through here, we've got a heap of questions, 16 questions, which is fantastic. Okay, there's a couple of questions on this, and it'd be good to get your insight, Cara. So, my huge concern is about the very high fee, 8K, for a 6 month course versus the employability thereafter. Whilst understanding that it is up to us individually to make sure we succeed, what is the likelihood of landing a high paying job after this? The likelihood of landing a high paying job, it's difficult to really for us to give a blanket answer to that, because it's very dependent on your circumstances, what your previous skills are, your transferable skills. Again, the coaches will work with very much in the early stages, identifying what is a realistic goal for you. And again, we're working with you to help you achieve as best of a role as you can. But it's hard for us to give a blanket idea of the likelihood of landing a role that would suit your circumstances per se. But the first part's an interesting one in that you've committed, Cara, to a high fee course, um, employability key at the end potentially. What do you think the program provided you that ultimately helped you land the role that you wouldn't have had previously? Where was the real value in your mind?
And again, I can't speak to specifically the high paying job part because I have chosen to work towards the charity public sector area. Um, so again, I was never going to go into a 100K role. But in terms of the skills and the sort of employability aspect, I think it gave me a lot of firstly a lot of the skills that I would need to succeed in this role. So the technical skills, but also the presenting skills. For most of the coursework, you have to provide a presentation of you talking about the project. So either you're pretending that you're, presenting to the company that you've been working for, or you're explaining the reasoning for your project and what you've done. And a lot of that is stuff that I do every day now, that sort of data storytelling and using what you've produced as to tell the story of what you've produced. Literally use it every single day. Um, I think again the really practical examples that you can give of things that you've done that can allow you to say like, oh, I have a direct experience doing this thing that you're looking for. Again, is immeasurable. If you were to go to try and get a job at a big corporate entity, they will ask you like, can you give me an example of this? And you will be able to say, yes, I can, because I did that in my course. And hopefully also I took that further and went and created a portfolio that uses those skills in other ways as well.
Yeah, that's useful insight. And again, there's another question here that I think ties well into this from Eve. Eve, you've asked a few questions. There's another one around a PG cert, which I'll talk to at the end. We have launched a formal pathway to a postgraduate certificate as a part of completing this program, which is really exciting. Launched 2 months ago. But your question was in line with this, which is, I would agree with the concerns over the cost versus likelihood of securing employment afterwards. From what I've read, data analysts are in demand, but competition is high, and keen to understand people's experiences when applying for jobs against candidates who have a BSc or master's or years of experience already. So a couple of things on that. In one of our most recent surveys, 87.5% of the students that completed the survey achieved their intended career outcome. So again, that ties into us being careers focused, and that's what we're working towards. We've also implemented for this intake outcomes-based career coaching, which means that as a part of completing the program, if you still haven't achieved your intended career outcome and used your standard 6 sessions, you can access coaching for a further 6 months until you achieve your intended career outcome. So again, we're ramping up that focus on making sure that you achieve your goal, and we can be there to support you from that perspective. Cara, did you have a bachelor's degree or a master's? Or both?
Bachelor's. No, just a bachelor's.
Yeah. So with Eve's question, I guess, in terms of your experience, you've done a bachelor's. A lot of our students have either already done a bachelor's or a master's prior to this as well. What were the main differences to your traditional university education compared to this, and the value of, again, landing that role at the BBC?
So I would say uh, loads of people in my team have degrees. I think very few of them relate directly to what we're doing. So I think in terms of the direct correlation between your degree and the job that you necessarily want, I don't necessarily think it's that important. I think also there are loads of companies now who are saying that degrees aren't necessarily the be all and end all. One of my most favorite members of my team didn't do a degree at all, just did an apprenticeship. So I don't think that is, I'm not sure that that is that 100% necessary depending on what you want to do or where you want to work. So could you repeat the question?
No, you've answered that pretty well,
Oh,
just in terms of the difference of, and your view of the value of, say, a bachelor's or a master's compared to then what this provided in ultimately helping you achieve that role at the BBC. I think you've answered that pretty well. Anything else you want to add to that?
um, I think also another thing is that it's just worth thinking of the fact that a lot of organizations, once you're inside, if you want to do further qualifications, they will allow that. So loads of people in my team, in my department rather, are doing apprenticeships. That's a really big thing for the BBC at the moment. They've got loads of level 3 and level 4 apprenticeships that anyone can sign up for. So again, as long as you can get your foot in the door in sort of an entry level role or a role that you feel comfortable going into with your skills, you can gain skills as you're going. You can learn, you can further use your skills to get even more qualifications once you're in these big organizations because they want to support you.
Yeah. And I think in summary, in terms of the outcomes. Cara's spoken in a lot of detail about all of these separately, but you're looking at a certificate of completion recognition from top 30 university, which can get your foot in the door, as we spoke about when we're applying for roles. You've got the digital portfolio of evidence or the project-based learning that allows you to showcase clearly and differentiate the skills, the experiences you have to people you may be competing with, and tell a really impactful story. You've got the career coaching as well, which is about getting you in front of the right employers, helping you identify what that looks like for you, and making sure that you're showcasing your skills as effectively as possible. So there's a very holistic approach to it. Conscious of time, we've got about 10 minutes left. Love the engagement from everyone. There's a range of questions now that are more so for me, which I'll hang around at the end of the hour to answer, and then Cara will speed through these next few as well. There was a really good question here from Jenny. Hi, Cara. Thanks for sharing today. I've worked in TV production for over 20 years. I'd like to investigate what data analytics roles are available in the TV industry. One question, and Jenny, might be good for you to connect with Cara on LinkedIn regarding this, but do you have contact with other analysts within the industry? And then secondly, you work in audience, but what departments do other analysts work for? Does the indie sector use analysts, or does this tend to be preserved for the bigger corporations?
That's a good question. I don't know if it is reserved for the bigger corporations. I would imagine not, because a lot of some of the indies are actually quite big. For example, Banijay, I can't imagine that they don't have their own uh, data team, even if they don't necessarily have access to the Barb data. Um, there's a data science team within audiences, so I'm not in that team, but they are working on some really cool projects. They're looking at things like mapping uh, people between shows, people who watched this also watched this, and creating really cool visualizations for that kind of thing. There's also a direct data analyst team, a data analyst within my team who looks at the sort of wider. So I work primarily on TV shows, but she'll look at the wider landscape. She'll look at like integrating iPlayer data, which is separate from our Barb data set, and she'll provide like a more detailed view of some of the things that I look at in my role. And I imagine they'll also have radio will have their own data analysts. Um, any sort of ish part of the BBC will have its own data analyst, news, etc. Um, yeah, I can't say exactly how like what which industries will and which organizations will, but I find it really hard to say that there wasn't data analysts in other teams doing cool things. Um, so I'm just trying to think in terms of getting to work with those other analysts. I would say we absolutely do that. Because you're building a bigger story using data that you might not necessarily have access to, or tools that you might not necessarily have access to, and therefore you do have to work with other teams. And you can shoot them a question and you can say like, oh, I need this data, can you get it for me? And they'll you'll chat, you'll have conversations. So yeah, absolutely, you do get the chance to network and work with other data analysts across organizations.
Yep. Thank you. Great answer. Shingai has followed up, which I like. So I stand to be corrected. There's a bit of a convo going on here, which is good. I stand to be corrected, but I think Eve could also be referring to applying for jobs against candidates who have a bachelor's or a master's in this field already, in computer science or data. What was your bachelor's degree in?
It was in computer science, but again, I hadn't used it in 10 years. And also, it wasn't a very good one. So um, I would say that I wouldn't say that it came into any um, consideration. I think the thing to remember is if you're getting interviews, people want to hire you. So you're already at the point where they've already said, I think you're qualified. They're just trying to see if you're a fit for the organization and they want you to show you the skills and examples of things that you've done. So I don't think it's necessary that that you need to worry so much about people with other skill sets because or other qualifications because they exist. They are going to be competing, but it's about how you present yourself that gets you in the room. So how good your cover letter is, how good your CV is. I I think it's not necessarily something to worry about. You can't predict what other people are going to have or what they're going to be doing. You can just bring the best that you can do.
The pace of change is a big one. When we think about bachelor's or master's, like the speed for a traditional program to be able to make sure that the content is relevant and up to date, especially if it's a technical program, can be quite challenging. So I always recommend like look at our course outlines and compare it to any other programs and look at job advertisements for roles that potentially interest you and see what fits and aligns. What are the skills that they're asking for as to what then program is actually providing those for you. I think is a good comparison that students have done. Couple more minutes with Cara. Really appreciate it. Love the engagement. You've been great. Sharon had a question. How many roles did you apply for before landing your new role?
So I'm really picky about what I apply for. So I probably only applied for maybe like 30 to 50 jobs. And some of them were just like throwaways. Like I was like, okay, I feel like I have to apply for something today, so I'll apply for this, but I'm not that into it. In terms of the roles that I definitely specifically wanted, I would probably say it was about 10, and I got 4 interviews from out of the 10. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, hope that
Yeah,
helps.
yeah, it does. Everyone's different again.
And also that was across a 5 month period. That wasn't, or a 4 month period. It wasn't like, and I wasn't applying every single day. I was sort of looking after my mental health. I was doing other things. I was going outside, meeting friends. I didn't apply like it was my full-time job. I sort of took time to sort of think about what I was doing and where I wanted to work and what I was wanted to do. I didn't scattergun at all.
Yeah, that's what works for you, right? Everyone's different. You'll that's where you can all utilize the support differently from a career coaching perspective, dependent on the urgency and whatever your goal is. A question here. So, from an anonymous attendee, I work full time, night shift, Monday to Friday. Really need to change my job. Um, how responsive are the trainers during and after the courses? I've had experience with trainers that are not responsive after payment is made. How did you find the student support? The course facilitators, who are the academic support, and then your success managers. Um, how did you find them?
I thought they were great, especially towards for the coursework, especially they were incredible. Like literally, that you could put in time with them. You could say like, I really need help with this specific section, or I need help with. I'm just generally having a question around this part of the coursework, and they will find you a time to talk to them. They'll talk through them. They won't give you the answers, but they'll very heavily like this is what you're trying to work out. Like here is the question. Really think, help you think about how you can uh, problem solve. Again, you had those sessions every week in the week where you could go and ask questions as well. And also the course uh, content is really exhaustive. Like a lot of things had videos, a lot of things were literal examples. So I feel like I didn't necessarily make as much use of the facilitators as other people did. But again, and you have that network of people that you can ask. Also, there were loads of people using the forum to ask questions, so you could ask other students as well. And also, once you build those relationships, you can directly email people you're working with to ask questions. Um, so I had really no issues in terms of contacting the facilitators or anyone. I got all the support that I needed. I think it's just about how much time you put in to making sure that you can ask those questions. So obviously, if you're asking, an hour before the assignment is due, not great. But if you say, okay, well, this is happening in 4 days' time, and I'm really struggling with this section, go forth and ask that question and find the people that can help you with it, because they will be willing to help.
Yeah. Yeah. We spoke about this a few times. Don't suffer in silence, as they say. But just additional one to this question. There's 2 live sessions per week at the moment. There are Thursday and a Friday at lunchtime. Encouraged to attend. If you can't, they are recorded for you to watch at a more appropriate time. Are there any opportunities for internships while training and job placements after the course? As we've kind of spoken to, it's not a direct part of the program. It's rather working with your coach to identify the suitable roles and then helping you land that as an outcome. So if that's an internship for whatever your circumstances are, that's fine. It's a pay job, then of course that's achievable as well.
Yeah. I think there were a couple of sessions with organizations as well, where I imagine if you reached out afterwards and said, I'm really interested in internship, I will work, evenings, or I will work for cheap, I'm sure they would think about it. I'm not sure that wouldn't guarantee that would happen, but if you were to reach out to any of these people who made the time to do these sessions, I'm sure they would be absolutely willing and happy to try and help you out if they can.
Absolutely, good point. There's again other examples of networking where we don't have formal pathways set up with those individuals or companies, but we're working with them as a part of the program. So we always um, uh, try and make those opportunities as available as possible. I know we're over time. 2 more quick questions, Cara, and then we'll let you leave, and I'll finish with some enrollment questions. But 2 more. Really appreciative of the engagement here. How does the program balance theory versus hands-on application?
So I think a lot of it is hands-on application, which I found really helpful. It will sort of give you like a explanation of the thing that you're talking about, and then every single explanation is accompanied with a small task. Obviously, if you don't have time, you don't have to do all of them, but like you do have the time and the resource to say like, uh, here is basically every question gives you a data set that you can then go and play with and figure out the exact way that it works, or play with the syntax, or get a chance to apply it. Um, I, and then also there are quizzes in between. There's like, uh, there were smaller forums that were just for specific questions. So I think there's a lot of theory in terms of like you get a lot of the information, and then every single bit of theory that you have gives you the opportunity to put it into practice.
Last question. And just a clarification. So someone asked, are you saying that it took you 4 to 5 months after completing the course to find a job in data? Or what was the
Uh,
timeline?
I was made redundant, so I went through the redundancy process in the sort of like September to December. Yeah, September to December. And then I took a couple weeks to sort of recover from that, because it is quite a traumatic experience. Obviously, even me, who was like, I don't really love this job anymore, it was still very like emotional, because my whole team was being made redundant. It wasn't just me. Um, and then I want to say like 3 weeks of just like chilling after Christmas, and then I started looking for jobs in uh beginning of February, and got a job in April. So I guess it was really like 3, 4-ish months. And then I started my job in May.
Cool. I think that's a good end. Cara, again, thank you so much for your time. You've been brilliant. Really clear, succinct, and some incredible insight. And I think that's evident in the engagement from the people in attendance. If everyone else on here is able to hang around for additional 5 minutes, I will answer the remaining questions. But Cara, before we let you go, any final advice?
Um, I would just say, it feels like a big decision, but it can change your life. It's just about that time. It's about investing in yourself. And I think, it's very achievable. I think it feels like it might be challenging, but it's very achievable. And again, with the money, it's a lot of money, but don't worry too much about it. If you can, split it up. I put mine on a credit card, and I paid it off over the last like 2 years, and it was absolutely fine. Um, I believe in you guys. You can do it.
Thank you so much, Cara. Appreciate it. Have a lovely rest of your day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Cara. All right, team. So we'll get into a bit of a speed answer here because I'm conscious of us being over time, but there are enrollment questions. Note in the chat, there is a link to book a time with your enrollment advisor. We're just here to have an exploratory conversation and answer a lot of these questions that are being posted here now. So team's lovely, Ruan, Jackie, Niels, book a time with them. Dedicate 15, 30 minutes to be able to really delve into your circumstances and they can answer those questions for you. But I'm going to do my best now to answer the questions that are here as well. There's a question here. I've noticed that most, if not all, people who have transitioned to become data analysts come from already professional or semi-professional backgrounds and with degrees. I'm 54 years old, who doesn't have a degree or even career, but has been employed in basic pay jobs. For the longest time, I lacked confidence and direction until now. I do have some experience in first-line technical support, as I've always been interested in computers and even took an open university course in programming, the latter being last century. The question is, do you think someone my age and status has any chance of becoming a data analyst after taking this LSE course? Do you personally know of anyone who was in a similar position to me who has also become a data analyst around my age? So certainly in terms of age, yes. If you look at our YouTube, you can see some insights from Elodie Hudson, who changed career at the age of 50. This is an anonymous attendee. Your circumstances, again, are different, right? In terms of your background and experience. So we're not here to get people to enroll that we don't feel we can support in achieving their intended goal, right? So what I'd really recommend, again, is book a time with your EA and we can have a conversation about what your history really looks like, what it is that you actually want in your next role in your career, and making sure that a data analyst role is exactly that. And then we can talk about all the ways that we can support you in achieving it. We have had students in their 50s achieve career outcomes as a part of completing, so very much achievable, but I don't want to make promises until we actually speak in detail with you regarding your unique circumstances as well. So booking a time with an EA would be very useful. Eve, I should say, you had a question which I thought was an important one, which was around the employer, the PG cert, I should say. So we've been working on 4 years to get this formal pathway. And what it looks like now is that if you complete the 6-month Career Accelerator, you will be able to return to complete one further academic capstone. So it's like an additional 3 months. And if you complete that, you can graduate with a formal postgraduate certificate from the LSE. So a formal postgraduate qualification. It's the first of its kind in terms of this pathway for the LSE. And it's incredibly exciting to be able to have that opportunity. The program as it's designed without the postgraduate certificate component will do all of the things that Cara and I have spoken about today, but it's good that upon completion, whether it be immediately or more so maybe in months or years' time, if you decide that you want to return to further develop your skills that you've further developed professionally, then the postgraduate certificate is a really exciting pathway. You need to get an average grade of 65% or above to be deemed eligible for it. And yeah, we can send more information on it to you via email as well. The master's component, so it's potentially credit bearing. The next step for us is to look at a pathway for a master's, but that'll be a little while away as we build and develop the program. The demand for the postgraduate certificate's been really high. Next step is master's, but very much in its infancy. Whereas the postgrad certificate is now live and available. In terms of the organizations that are used for the main projects, this was the other part of your question, Eve. Are there any healthcare, government, or charity? Yeah, we have a pool of partners that we work with. So they vary. We've done with Bank of England, Zumo is a global e-bike company, Pure Gym, Agent 3, ThoughtWorks is a global software, a global consulting company. There's a whole range of those. So it's just dependent on what project partner has projects for us at the time of you doing the program. Okay, if I do this course outside of the UK, will it affect my participation in the course, such as due time to zones? Also, without a background in coding or programming, are there any support options, beginner-friendly resources, or special accommodations available for students who are new to this field? As mentioned, 2 live sessions per week are a UK lunchtime, so 12 o'clock on a Thursday and a Friday. We have students from the Middle East. We have students from Europe, obviously, majority in the UK. We've got some from Southeast Asia. So as long as you're aware of those live sessions and if you can fit that in around your routine, that's great. As mentioned, they're all recorded as well for you to watch at a more appropriate time, and there is support provided asynchronously as well. We've got many students that would be fit into this category and happily complete the program. Cara spoke a fair bit about the background in coding or programming. There's the entry criteria, so you might look at the aptitude test. But again, recommendation in terms of skills, have some exposure to Excel and specifically pivot tables. There's a lot of free online resources to get understanding of that. And then from there, it's really about dedicating the time you need to complete the program, rather it being, unachievable for you with your current skill set. Best thing, book a time with your EA so we can actually understand what your background is. What's the course structure like in terms of set times, attend sessions, deadlines? So we've spoken about the live sessions. You have 4 major projects over the 6 months. So that's basically one project due every 6 or 7 weeks on average. That's what you're working towards, basically, and you need to successfully complete all 4 projects over the 6 months to complete the program. That's one project at a time as well. It's not 4 projects all running at once. Are there any alternative payment options or plans available for full upfront? Yes, there are. We have a range of payment options. You can pay upfront and there's a fee reduction available. You can pay the fees over 6 months or 9 months, and depending on the deposit you pay, there can be fee reductions available there too, so ranging from a 10 to a 30% deposit. Or we have a 24-month payment option as well, interest and fee-free, with a finance provider of our StepX. All those details we can send to you via email. Reach out to your EA and we'll get that out to you. But there's a range of flexible payment options available, and some fee reductions dependent on the option that you select. Melvin. I work in corporate investigations, having pivoted from law enforcement at the age of 50. I work with large data sets using SQL, perfect, and I've used DataCamp to get me up to speed. However, I'm concerned this might be a big jump. Is there a possibility of gaining access to the aptitude test before applying to see if it fits? So Melvin, hopefully, because you put this question in quite early into the call, the webinar, hopefully Cara has alleviated some of those concerns. You're very much eligible based on your experience with SQL. The aptitude test, you wouldn't get access to it before applying. You would apply and get accepted, and then we can give it to you to play around with. But again, the aptitude test is not a true indication really of what you're focusing on throughout the program. It's a test that was created by the LSE as a pathway for people that don't meet criteria, but it's a basic focus on maths, statistics, which again is only really a core focus of the program over a few weeks. The rest is focused on the in-demand skills and technologies. So you very much sound like someone that would enter the program with the required experience. Don't let that be the thing that would stop you. And again, hopefully Cara alleviated some of that in her insights, but would love to chat further should you need. Another question around the aptitude test. How accessible is it? Does it cater for people who are neurodivergent and may need more time but are able to do the work? I did a mock test and got 24 out of 30, but it was more than 30 minutes. We book a time with your EA so we can have a speak to you just about circumstances, and we can look to try and facilitate an alternative option should we need. We have been able to do that before, for sure, but we just need to speak to you and understand more. On top of that, we have candidates in the program that are neurodivergent. The more that you're comfortable with sharing up front allows the student success team to really personalize the support required for you to get the most out of the program, and we're happy to do that. Does the program start on the 28th of April, or orientation starts on the 28th? Orientation starts on the 28th, which is technically the beginning of the program, but we will accept late applications up until the very latest would be the 6th of May. So you'd have to have applied and made payment by that stage. And then course 1 starts on the 12th of May. So the sooner you can enroll and engage with orientation, the better. But for people that do enroll late, the success team can help you get up to speed sooner as well. What other intakes or enrollments are there this year if I can't enroll this month? We've got July 14th and October 27th. And then we'll have another 4 next year as well. Thank you for doing this. This is from Anton. When it comes to finding data for the courses projects, is our data provided? Yes. Yeah. For all of the individual projects, all of the projects, the data sets are provided for you. You don't need to source your own data. 2 more questions. Does data science also include cybersecurity and AI? Doesn't include cybersecurity. That would be a separate program. We currently don't have a cybersecurity program, but maybe in the future. There is some brief introduction to artificial intelligence through some masterclasses as well. There's 4 of those throughout the program. That's it. Any final questions? Appreciate your time. I know I sped through that at the end. Book a time with your EA. Plenty of time still to apply for the program. Get rolling. As Cara said, if you take that first step and you start now, like by the end of the year, you're going to be in a really, really different position, and there should be some great opportunities for you. So we'd love to support you. Look forward to hopefully seeing some of your names on the list for the upcoming intake or future intakes. Thank you so much, everyone. Speak soon.